Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Sponsored by Game Time. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Falcons Squad Show. I'm your host, Jarvis Davis, and riding with me today, I have my main man, Aaron Freeman, who is the host of Locked On Falcons, and he's also known as Mr. AKA. And I have Maria Martin, who is an all-out superstar for 11 Alive, host of Sports Extra, all that stuff. Man, she's a big deal. We got to hold it down for you all today. I want to start off by saying thank you for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you download your podcast, make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. The Falcons Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. You're going to get all this Falcons therapy every time you turn on Locked On Sports Atlanta and Locked On Falcons, baby. We got you covered right here. Now, coming up on today's show, we'll discuss a training camp battle that's not over. Are the rookie first rounders ready to roll? And is this the end for number 44? But first, we got to talk about, yes, Maria, I just did that. You heard me. That's what I'm talking about.
I was not prepared for you to hit that note.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I had to test my vocals for the day. I'm hyped up. I don't know if y'all can tell. Just took me a shot of Colombian coffee, man. I'm going to be on one today, so y'all bear with me.
Buckled up. Ready to roll.
Yes, I'm ready to roll. Absolutely. But first, we have to talk about Kaleb McGary. He was carted off at practice earlier this week, and they said he had to get an MRI. And according to Jeremy Fowler, who's an NFL insider, is super, super tapped in, he stated that he's going to miss some time, but they don't quite know exactly how much they're going to miss at this time. So that means to me, Maria, that Terry Fontenot probably needs to start getting on the phone right now, because when you have a guy like Kaleb McGary who had some issues, in pass protection, but we have highlighted how great he is in the run game. Now that he's gone, what do the Falcons do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, shout out to Jeremy Fowler for putting that out there. I knew that it was a little bit more serious than we probably thought initially, just because there hasn't been any news out there of Kaleb yet. And the team obviously officially not saying anything, but that MRI clearly indicates that things could be potentially bad. And a lot of people were pointing to Justin Fields. Remember earlier in training camp when all over X, he got carted off turned into be absolutely nothing. He got his toe stepped on, no big deal. But you knew pretty quickly that Justin Fields was not a big deal. You don't know that with Kaleb McGary. And I think they're being overly cautious with the way that they kind of put out the information, just because, look, this is the blindside tackle. This is somebody who plays a pivotal role in what happens to the offense this year. This is probably worst case scenario for a team that has already been thin just across the line, but specifically at the tackle position. And then you've got Storm Norton, who's going to miss time. And behind that, you're thinking, okay, do you move Elijah Wilkinson over, because that's what they did when Kaleb McGary exited at practice. They put him in there at tackle. He works at guard as well. And then past that, it's a 7th round draft pick who's a rookie who has not looked good in preseason games, might I add. So, Jarvis, I think maybe Terry does get on the phone, but there's not really much out there right now. There could be once cut day comes to fruition on next Tuesday, and some guys fall off the roster, but you're not looking at a lot of options as we speak. I just think you need a starting caliber tackle to be in there instead of maybe relying and gambling on someone like Jack Nelson.
Yeah, I don't think Jack Nelson is an option. I'll go ahead and say it. I don't need to hear Terry say it or not
Mhm.
even consider him
Yeah.
putting on the active roster because I think he's destined for the practice squad, and we'll talk about some guys who are on the verge of that a little bit later
He's a
on. But
development guy. That's why they
absolutely,
drafted
yeah,
him,
and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what those
Mhm.
bottom end of the draft guys are for. That's exactly what those guys are for. You trusting in your coaching staff to get those guys up to a level where they can contribute to your team. So, I mean, that's what it's all about. But I think that I don't know about y'all, but for me, I was sitting just last week. I was sitting up there on Spot Track looking at, like, okay, here's some available tackles here, got George Fant. Oh, okay, George, he okay, I was looking at that before we even got the Kaleb McGary news. And just like you mentioned, you bring up Storm Norton. I think that, and with him being out, and we saw everybody was talking about the concerns that we had as far as the offensive line and the depth. It doesn't look that great. Like your starting offensive line, sure, those guys stay healthy, you're good. But if any one of those guys get hurt, then you might have some issues, and that's where we are right now. But Aaron, for you, what were kind of your thoughts or feels like leading up to the injury, and like where are they now as far as, okay, the Falcons have their starting right tackle who's down, and they're basically in a situation where they might have a guy that has been working at guard, worked at tackle because the left tackle that was out there wasn't doing that great of a job, and he was just kind of filling in, so to speak. But he's been settled in at guard, Elijah Wilkinson. So, what are your thoughts as far as where they are right now, where you were leading up to it, and kind of how did the Falcons move forward?
Well, we've been talking about it a lot on these Falcon Squad shows these last couple of weeks since the preseason started about the concerns about the offensive line depth. And basically we expressed consistently like, hey, there is going to be an injury at some point on the offensive line because in 90% of the Falcons seasons over the last 3 decades, there has been an injury on the offensive line that has led to backups playing. And the math says that we'll probably get backups playing for at least 5 or 6 games on average, for that offensive line. Now, at the time when we were saying that, the hope was that, hey, well, that injury is going to happen much, much later in the season once the Falcons sort of get some momentum going and they can better navigate it. And now, only a couple of days go by and now we're dealing with that issue at this stage. So, there's going to be a little bit of scrambling for the Falcons as they get ready for the regular season. As Maria stated, and as Jarvis stated, like, I don't know if there's going to be some option that they can go out there and get they're going to be able to plug in at right tackle and solve the problem and be like, oh, well, we don't have to worry about right tackling anymore. Right. They were luckily able to do that 2 years ago with Storm Norton. But they had to go through it. Isaiah Prince, that no one remembers, that he was the guy they picked up off of waivers at the beginning of that 2023 season. They spent a month with him, and then they're like, yeah, this is not going to work out. And then they were able to get Storm Norton at that point and solve the problem. So you're hoping to luck into a good tackle off the waivers, or maybe shopping for a guy via trade, but teams aren't going to give away good tackles, certainly for not cheap. And so right now, to me, I think the real solution to the problem is not necessarily what Terry Fontenot does in terms of roster movement. They're going to have to make a move, but ultimately, basically what I'm saying is I don't think that move is going to solve the problem. Maybe it's a Band-Aid solution until Storm Norton comes back. That's probably your best case scenario. If he's back, in week 6, somewhere around there, as he's projected to miss the first 4 to 6 games of the season. But I think ultimately it's going to boil down to what adjustments they make from a play calling and a scheming standpoint, where I think you're going to have to see this team do the things that we've been talking about on this show for months that we want to see them do, which is dial up the play action. That was something that the Falcons did a couple of years ago when they were coming off that disastrous 2021 season, where their offensive line got exposed and Kaleb McGary was really struggling that year, in addition to other players that previous year. And so Arthur Smith was like, okay, well, I'm not going to get into a straight drop back passing attack because that's going to expose my offensive line to problems. And so they're better moving forward than they are going backwards. So they ran play action like 40% of the time, right? It was like the second most in the NFL. And so last year, the Falcons ran play action the least, 14% of the time last year. And so there's going to have to be a significant shift in that. And then the other thing I think you're going to probably not be able to do is run the outside zone run scheme to the degree that we've successfully run it with Kaleb McGary, because that's been, to me, the biggest flaw with this second string offensive line in the preseason. Is like they can't run outside zone in the preseason against second and third and fourth string D line. And it's like, well, if they can't do it against those guys, they certainly ain't going to be able to do it against like Vita Vea and Javon Hargrave and all those guys at the beginning of the season. So they're going to have to diversify their run scheme. So to me, like, ultimately, I think their ability to navigate this injury for however long Kaleb McGary's out, for however long Storm Norton is out, is really going to depend on scheming and play calling than necessarily, we're going to be able to find a suitable right tackle off of waivers or via trade or in free agency that's going to come in. And we're like, set it and forget it. Like, again, there's a reason why tackle is a premium position, because teams don't let good ones go. So the Falcons are just going to have to make do, I think, in the meantime, and hope that their play calling can, fill the void.
It's terrible timing. It is horrible timing. Not like an injury is ever good timing. There's never good timing for an injury, but before you even get started and before you open your season against a division rival who has really just taken control of the NFC South, it's a tough break. And I hate it for Kaleb McGary specifically because, as you remember, the first time he talked to us at training camp, he said, I'm the healthiest I've been. He had an off-season surgery to remove some bone spurs, and he just felt completely ready to go and healthier than he ever has. And then all of a sudden you're hearing non-contact injury, which is typically not the best. As we all know, when you hear non-contact, it is probably the worst case scenario. Your mind doesn't want to go there just because of the gravity, I think, of the situation and the ramifications it has on this team. But yeah, the timing couldn't be worse.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Maria. And then as far as what Free just said, I think you bring up an interesting point, right? Because when you think about, I've been joking around about, slightly being petty a little bit, as far as giving coaches like kudos for different schemes and working different guys and putting them in different situations so they can be successful. I think it's going to be so true right now, because he could pick up the phone and make some phone calls, but what is he offering up? You already don't have your first round pick in 2026, right? So I think that there are only so many options that Terry Fontenot has. And when you think about like the ramifications of what this season has, right? There's a potential, if things don't go right, that you could be looking for another job as a general manager. Like, I don't know what a desperate move looks like for Terry Fontenot in this particular situation. But Maria, like you talked about how this is this is where the Falcons are right now. I'm interested to get your thoughts on, like, how do you feel about Terry Fontenot and what type of aggressiveness he has to use to kind of fix this situation? Or is it just what Aaron said? Hey, coach is going to have to figure this thing out, and they're going to have to count on their scheme more so than talent.
Yeah, I feel like in this particular year and the pressure that Terry Fontenot has against him, people do funny things when there are big moments at risk in their life. And if he's going to gamble on anything and be aggressive, this would be the year for him to do that. And you do, in my opinion, depending on, because remember, we don't actually know how much time Kaleb is going to miss, right? So once we get that, as we sit here at 12:50 p.m., once we get that definitive information, it may change my mindset. Is Kaleb out for the year? We've seen that happen before, clearly in joint practices. Braylon Trice had happened to. I'm talking about in training camp. So these are season-ending injuries in training camp. And then corresponding moves are made in order to try to fill the depth void, et cetera. It's the reason that this team managed to get Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons. They were added because they were worried about the depth there. Clearly those didn't work out, but regardless, there is a level of aggression that Terry took in those instances to go out and get players to help them defensively. I think that Terry could do the same. The problem is, as you guys were illustrating earlier, there's just not a lot of options out there for him at the tackle position. There's a reason why offensive linemen are getting paid more than they ever have. They are at a premium. Good starting offensive linemen. I'm talking about all across the line, not just tackle specifically. There are not a lot of them out there. And so when you get a good one and you've got someone that is not just serviceable, but someone that can give you X amount of years in the NFL, you're going to pay them money. You're going to keep them on your team. You're not giving them away. So I don't even know what the option would be, but if there's any year for Terry to go out and try to fix this, if Kaleb, again, a big if he's going to miss a very significant amount of time, then I think that this would be the year that Terry does that.
Well, I'll just add that, this is what Terry Fontenot does. It's like, oh, I get an option to give away draft picks, like
yeah,
absolutely. I'm gonna do what I do, baby. So like that's what Terry's gonna wind up doing, is probably trading away an asset at some point, and we'll be like, okay, like, is that going to come back to bite us a couple of years down the road? But Terry's like, hey, I ain't worried about what's going to come back to bite us in 2027. Like, I'm trying to keep my job in 2025. So sure. I do agree with Maria where, yeah, this is probably the time where, if Terry Fontenot is going to live up to what did he say, 75% aggressiveness when it comes to
he did say
trading
that.
up in the draft.
That's
like,
right.
Yeah, he's going to be 75% or maybe even 90% aggressive when it comes to filling this potential void. But as Maria said, like a lot of it is going to depend on how long Kaleb McGary is going to be out, right? Again, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, we're going to have to make do with Elijah Wilkinson or somebody else for 4 weeks, and then Storm Norton's going to come back, and then we can plug and play Storm Norton for 4 weeks, and then Kaleb McGary is going to come back by week 8 or something like that, then I don't think you need to be super, super aggressive. But if that math is a little different, then it certainly will change, how aggressive that this team, I won't say should be, but will be with Terry Fontenot.
In translation, all I heard was blank them picks. That's all I heard. No. But no, I mean, I get it. I mean, like whatever you got to do to give the coach everything he possibly needs in order to be successful. Like I think that's the job of the general manager. Now, the levels of it. Like if it's the end of the season, a season-ending injury. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Because you can't wait around for Storm Norton to get healthy, and he's saying 4 to 6 weeks, or they still trying to figure that out. His agent was like, I don't know about all that. Hey, we'll figure it out. But Elijah Wilkinson at the right tackle spot, I don't know how I feel about that. And if I don't know how I feel about that, that means I don't have a good feeling about it. So yeah, blank them picks. I would totally understand. Sure. Coming up next. Is this the end for 44? We'll discuss. This episode of the Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th, folks. Yes, August 26th. Put it on your calendars. It is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. Gotta love those hunches, baby. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions, So whether you're calling for your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. I'm telling you, folks, they're trying to give Joe Burrow the MVP trophy right now. So all I'm saying is, I'm just saying, listen to your boy. This is my gut. They're trying to give Joe Burrow the MVP. So August 26th, go put some little some on that thing, man, and see what happens. I promise you, you won't regret it. And this is not advice. I'm just giving you my thoughts. So what I want you to do right now is visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets right now, because Future Day is 1 day and 1 day only. Guess what, guys? FanDuel, play your game. We want to thank you for making the Falcon Squad your first listener today. Why don't you go ahead and check out my man, Aaron Freeman on Locked On Falcons for your second listen of the day. I'm talking about hour-long coverage right after the game ends. And then you got 30 more minutes of Aaron himself, Mr. AKA holding it down. So 90 minutes, man, going strong of good Falcons talk / therapy. Yeah. So yeah. But I think one of the things that we also need to therapize on today. Yeah, I'm making up words today, man. I'm telling you, I'm out here. You know what I'm saying? We out here today. But I think one of the things that I feel I need to talk about, I feel I need to get it off my chest. You know, I was scrolling down social media, Aaron. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at all these guys coming up off the pup list. I'm like, oh yeah, such and such been off the pup list. You know, Darren Waller coming off the pup list. You know, start practice today. And you know, there's somebody else on this team that's been on the pup list. Ain't nobody talking about him come off the pup list, and that's Troy Anderson, Aaron's main man. Oh gosh, Aaron. It don't look good for Mr. Troy Anderson. So can you kind of talk me off the ledge and tell me that it's not the end for him in his career as a Falcon?
I mean, I don't know if I can do that, Jarvis. But I do appreciate.
Not for me specifically.
Yeah. You know, I'll try my best to maybe talk the audience off the ledge, but I don't know if I can reach you. You plan on jumping regardless of what I say when it comes to that. But yeah, I think when it comes to Troy Anderson this year, we talked about this before, where when the Falcons went out and signed Divine Diablo as their opening move in free agency this year, it kind of signaled that the team was moving on from Troy Anderson. They were no longer putting stock in what Troy Anderson was going to bring to the table, as we have done the last 2 seasons, hoping, believing, you know, as I get labeled with being Troy Anderson being my guy, it's just mostly because, like, hey, the Falcons need Troy Anderson to be good in order for this defense to make strides. Sure. Unfortunately, Troy Anderson, outside of basically one game, was not good and not very available. And so, you know, contributed to the Falcons defense not being very good, especially last year. But, you know, there are other factors, you know, shout out to Jimmy Lake, always catching strays. But
it's every week on this show.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the low hanging fruit. So, you know, we got to give the people what they want when it comes to that. But yeah, I think, you know, now as we approached it, you know, now months later, and, you know, trying to get some sort of specifics from Raheem Morris, which, you know, as we learned with Jeremy Fowler, like, you know, getting specific injury information out of this team is never going to happen. So it's like, oh, he's going to miss some time. Okay. Does that mean 2 weeks or does that mean 2 years? I have no idea. It could be anything in between those things. And that's the situation with Troy Anderson. So I think the best case scenario for Troy Anderson is at some point this season, he comes off the pup lists or whatever, comes off the bench, plays some special teams, gives us, you know, maybe a punt block or 2 or something like that. That's probably the best case. If there's an injury later in the season at linebacker, you know, maybe you feel a little bit better about Troy Anderson and hope you can get a repeat of last year's Saints game if he has to step in for Caden Ellis or Divine Diablo or something like that for a game or 2. But at this point, like, that's a hope, right? At this point. And so that's really all you're really kind of hoping for with Troy Anderson. Like, maybe you get something by years in from him if he can get healthy. But as we sit here today, there doesn't seem to be any indication that he's going to get healthy at any point. And so, no, Jarvis, I can't tell you that, you know, this is not going to be Troy Anderson's last year. I think that writing has been on the wall for months. And the fact that he hasn't been able to see the practice field at any point is certainly not helping those things. So at this point, anything you get from Troy Anderson is gravy at this point. I think the Falcons have moved on, and, you know, I think the fan base probably should too.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I know you might not believe what I'm about to say. It's kind of sad, to be honest with you, because I like the conviction that Terry has when it comes to drafting certain guys. I love the holistic approach when it comes to players, like the fact that they James Pierce Jr.'s mom before they draft him, to have that one last little conversation. I love that type of stuff, because at the end of the day, man, like, it takes a lot for a player to be successful. Okay, how much talent you have, Like, you got to be in the right scheme. You got to make sure that the coaches are right. You got to have the commitment to yourself to be able to do whatever you need in order to be successful. It's just so many different factors. And then when you talk about having different defensive coordinators, a guy that shouldn't have been a defensive coordinator in last year in James Lake, I think those are some of the factors that were counted against him. Now, couple that with not being able to stay on the field, the injuries, all of those things just compile themselves and just like, yeah, it's a pretty safe bet that he's not going to be around. But it's unfortunate because you got just a little bit of a taste. He gave us a little blue magic, you know what I'm saying, Free. He gave us just a little bit. He gave a little taste, you know what I'm saying? Just a little bit. It's just like, oh my gosh, he's fast. They're not catching him. He can run. Yeah, that's exactly what Terry saw when they brought him in. But Maria, what would you say as far as Troy Anderson, what he's been, and is this the end?
Similar to some other players on this roster, I think Troy is going to be a victim of poor timing. And what I mean by that is he's in the final year of his rookie contract and still cannot play football. And as you have illustrated, the injuries are really genuinely the biggest concern for Troy. Plays in 7 games in 2024, starts 4 of them. He did get Defensive Player of the Week in the NFC at one point. And so you're thinking, this is great. This is what we wanted whenever we drafted Troy Anderson. This is exactly what we were looking for. Had a league high in tackles when he got that recognition. And he has shown you bits and pieces of what the idea for Troy Anderson was. And he was a big part of the plan for them defensively. He just can't stay healthy. It's really pretty simple. And in the NFL, when you have a consistent injury-ridden player, there's only so much time that you can quote unquote waste with this player, with them sitting on your roster. That is a valuable spot for someone else to fill. And especially for a team that is really trying to make this next step forward defensively, Troy is kind of holding up space. And it sucks because I really think Troy could have made a really big impact on this team. We were talking about him a ton when he was healthy. And you saw exactly what you mentioned, bits and pieces of Troy being great. But just the fact that he can't ever stay healthy, the fact that it's the last year of his rookie contract. So all of those variables, I think, for Troy kind of indicate the end. And then we know that everyone is guilty of this on the Falcons, of dancing around the truth when it comes to certain players. And that happened with Troy. I'm not totally ruling it out, he said, but I'm also not trying to lead you guys to believe this is going to be a week 1 thing for Troy. So to me, that means they're going to start to figure some other things out. And it's unfortunate. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that Troy magically gets healthy between now and, I don't know, week 1, week 2. It just, all signs don't indicate that that's going to be the reality.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that, sucks about it. You get the taste, you see it, and you understand why they took him. And then, but you just can't get the consistency of just being out on the field, because we knew that given his experience playing in that linebacker spot, it was minimal. So he's going to need to play as much as possible. And when you aren't available most of the time, as your tenure as an Atlanta Falcon, it kind of pretty much, the story writes itself, for sure. Real quick, before we go to break, I want to throw something at you guys. This is from a guy, Trash Top Billin. He gave a suggestion. We talked about Kaleb McGary being out and everything like that. Talking about Terry Fontenot, whether that's some of the options. That Elijah Wilkinson has stepped in as that right tackle spot. But he said that Matthew Bergeron's true position is right tackle. And Joshua Gray can play guard. Aaron, real quick, what are your thoughts on that particular move?
I don't know. I would say Matthew Bergeron's true position is right tackle. He played it in college, but that don't mean he can play it in the NFL. Ask Jalen Mayfield about that.
Amen.
And so, to me, you're potentially weakening another position in order to enhance another. I think we can figure out how to work around one weakness on the right tackle. That's arguably the easiest position to mask if you have a weakness there, just because you can chip and whatnot. So I don't see the point.
Norman, the lesser of the tackle positions, anyway. So, most teams, yeah.
So, like, I feel like we throwing a grenade in the offensive line room just to solve one problem. I don't think that's solving the problem. That's where I stand.
What about you, Maria?
Yeah, I'm literally the exact same thought process. Just because somebody played a certain position in college doesn't mean that they should play that in the NFL. You see it all the time. And those guys know what they're doing, especially the offensive line guys, when they're like, I don't really think that you're a tackle. I think we're going to move you over. So I think if you start shifting things around on this offensive line, that is just going to create a much larger problem than they have right now. And they already have a pretty big problem with the absence of Kaleb McGary, no doubt. But when you blow up something that is consistent and is working, and Matthew Bergeron, he's fine. He's getting better. He's been developing since he's been here. So I think just totally wiping the slate with the offensive line would just be chaos in the worst way. And I don't think that that's the move.
Yeah, I think you'd be robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, that's, you don't do stuff like that. And plus, like I mentioned earlier, we were questioning the offensive line depth before Kaleb McGary got hurt.
Yeah, good point.
That guard play has not been good. I'm sorry. I just go ahead and say it. We don't take from that position and then put someone in that's not ready to play. I could tell you Joshua Gray is not ready to play, be a starter in this league. I can tell you that right now, but we don't, you don't want to do anything like that because you'll mess up. You'll make more of a mess. And then that's basically like you have the mind thoughts of essentially like my youngest daughter, like she tries to fix things, as a 5-year-old. And, you kind of wonder like, don't take that next step. Come to daddy and say, hey, daddy help you how to fix it. Don't try to fix it your way because you're just going to be going down a rabbit hole. And it's going to make it even worse than what it was.
Daddy for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm curious.
Yeah. Who is that?
Terry Fontenot, right? He's a GM.
Okay. I don't think we should call him that, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird scenario, but I'm trying to get y'all to smell me a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Y'all understand what I'm coming from.
I don't know. I respect your daughter for trying to fix it herself.
I got the daughter analogy, but when we're mapping it onto the Atlanta Falcons, I'm like, who's daddy?
I'm out. I'm out.
Who's your daddy? Isn't that a All right, let's go to the next segment. It's getting a little awkward right now. So Jalon Walker and James Pierce Jr. will not be playing. Is one or both ready for the Buccaneers? We'll discuss. But first, gotta let you know that this episode of the Falcons Squad show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. I know I can't. Oh gosh, I forget sometimes. Whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money up on the table. And that's where there is Monarch Money. That's where they come into place, right? It's all in one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. They do all the heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to worry about all this stuff. I'm talking about they can link all your accounts in just minutes. You can get smart categorization of your spending and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. That is the big thing for me. I don't like spreadsheets. I don't like it. So yeah, Monarch Money is going to help me out as well. So it makes it simple by reviewing your finances with your partner. You can see budgets, goals, and spending activity all in one place. They condense it down, guys, and make it super simple. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. I want you to do is use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com. That's LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Half. That is amazing. That is great. Yes, save some money. People, manage your money. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. Like I mentioned before the break, guys, Raheem Morris said that Jalon Walker and James Pierce Jr. will not play in the preseason finale against the Dallas Cowboys. Let's start with Jalon Walker. Maria, are you confident that 11 will be ready to roll in week 1?
I don't know how it could be when he's missed half the padded practices that the Falcons have had in training camp, and now he's going to miss the second consecutive preseason game. It's hard to get a rookie ready, no matter how NFL ready you believe that he is. And we've all sang the praises of Jalon Walker and, not just Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris. All of us have belief in Jalon as well. But I'll double down on that and say it's hard to know if a guy's NFL ready, obviously, when they don't play and you don't see it, but also when you're still trying to figure out what the heck he's going to do for you on defense. They're trying to solidify exactly what his role is going to be. They want to give him one and then potentially work him in and a few others because we know the versatility that Jalon possesses, but we haven't seen him. It's a similar, not quite, but a similar conversation to Troy Anderson is you don't really know until you see someone. Granted, Troy Anderson, we've seen what he can do. Jalon is a rookie. We really genuinely have not gotten valuable reps for him. And it's frustrating because this is a player who had some injuries in college as well. They just seem to be nagging little injuries, but those add up over time. And I am concerned. I'm not concerned about the mental piece for Jalon. I don't know that I ever will be. Very smart kid, very football smart. His IQ's through the roof when it comes to that. I think he's NFL ready in that aspect. Other than that, it's hard for me to sit here and say I'm confident that he can trot out there against the Bucs and be disruptive because I have no idea. We don't know what it looks like for him. So yeah, as soon as I heard that he was going to miss this preseason game, clearly out of an abundance of caution, which is what they keep stressing because, groin, hamstring, those are all things that can take some time. So why not sit him in the preseason game? I get the ideology behind it. It's just frustrating when the player has only played half of your padded practices and you don't have a sample size for him at all. And then he's supposed to go out there and be as impactful as you drafted him to be in week 1. That's a hard expectation to fill. That's just a big ask. So yeah, I'm pretty worried about it at this point because this has been a consistent issue for him in the offseason.
Yeah, I think back to the first day. I think it was they were in pass and he was out there. I was like, oh man, this man was just moving around so fluently. He was coming off the edge, man. Just looked so much faster than any tackle that he was going up against that particular day. And then the next day, they were like, oh, Levin's on the sidelines. We're holding them out and under abundance of caution. I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be his middle name? Like Jalon under abundance of caution Walker? Like, no, I don't want to get into that arena of conversation. But yeah, I'm with you. It's just a big question mark when you think about like him being ready. And I think, and that's truly unfortunate because I like what I saw in the first game. I know a lot of people, were a little sketchy. Like, okay, well, did he look lost or what was he doing out there? I like what I saw from him in that running game. I thought he was doing well. He was really good at the point of attack, really holding up that tackle, that running back dip inside, holding that edge. You dip your head in there, you crash out and help your teammate make the tackle. So, those are some of the things that I really like that I saw from him in this short time in games. So, but Aaron, like, what about roughly about 2 weeks away? Do you feel like he's up to task? Like you feel like he's done enough to be able to say, hey, I'm ready to go and be a contributor in game 1?
I think, contributor is such an interesting way of phrasing it. Like, I think he will contribute in game 1.
I try.
Yeah.
Impactful contributor.
Yeah, it's like how much of a contribution? Because like right now, like if you're saying like, oh, I feel confident he'll play 10 snaps and potentially be on the pitch count and come in there for those 10 snaps and set the edge and maybe get a pressure maybe or something. I feel like he can do that. I feel pretty confident that he can come in and do that. But if you're going to need him to do more than that at this stage, that's where sort of my confidence dips a little bit because, is he going to have to be, is 2 weeks that he's going to get to rest these soft tissue issues that have been plaguing him, not just in training camp, but going back to the spring when he was dealing with that stuff that kept him out of the combine. Is 2 weeks going to be enough for those problems to go away? Probably not, knowing how these things tend to linger. The fortunate thing that Jalon Walker has going for him is that he's young, and so he's going to recover a lot sooner than if this was dealing with a veteran or something like that. Yeah. But that probably means, as we sit here today, like, is he going to be on a pitch count for like the first month of the season where it's like, yeah, we can't give you more than 10 or 15 snaps or whatever, because if we give you more, we might re-aggravate whatever those issues are. And so that's where most of my concern is, where it's just like, are we not going to get the full version of Jalon Walker until much, much later in the season? And then what happens if he aggravates one of these issues, this groin, this hamstring, this quad, all these things that have been bothering him in week one, and then it's the issue compounds itself, and then all of a sudden we got to shut him down, we got to put him on IR for 6 weeks or something, and then bring him back and all. So like it's there is a level of concern. I think he'll contribute, but in terms of like getting the best version of Jalon Walker, yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence that we're going to get that guy in week one.
And yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I can't even argue against that. But a guy that's like been on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? James Prince Jr. is beginning all the reps that he can handle. Maria, do you feel like JPJ is ready to rock?
I do. And he is a player that I think needed all the reps he can handle in training camp and preseason, without a doubt. We know he's not going to play in that final preseason game. And honestly, thank goodness, dude, sit down. He's taken over 500 snaps in training camp. Like, you're good, brother. We know what you can contribute. I still think, he's a little bit of a work in progress. He's young, and but you see all the intangibles and the tools, and you see it. So at least you feel confident that, okay, this isn't the finished product. How could it be? But it's there, and we have enough confidence where we know he is going to contribute, but he's going to contribute a lot, I think. And I think he's going to be effective at it. For James, with me, you talk about Jalon having this high football IQ. I think James is so athletic that 9 times out of 10, he just kind of relies on that. And is like, well, I'll figure it out. Like, as soon as the ball is snapped, it looks a little chaotic still sometimes for him. Not necessarily a bad thing, but in the NFL, those are things you got to finesse. And the best pass rushers tend to do that and to figure it out at some point. So I think he's going to get there. Again, by no means is he a finished product, but I'm so fired up about what he's brought to the table early in training camp to now. You've already seen him develop, which I think is such a promising sign for a young player, but he's going to be a problem to be reckoned with. And then as well, when you put him in real game situations, guys are going to figure him out. They're going to double team him. We've already seen that happening in preseason games. And how does he take that to the next level? How does he manage that? How does he get around that? And all that, I think, will be figured out. But I feel good about James. I have no issues with him sitting in that final preseason game.
I mean, that was one of my biggest concerns for him, the Falcons taking him, just watching the tape. I was just like, sometimes you feel like he just didn't have a plan and say, hey, man, I'm better than you. I'm more athletic than
faster,
you. Yeah. I'm faster than you. I'm going to beat you around his edge. Like, he was able to take advantage of bad tackles in college pretty consistently. However, you don't face those bad tackles in the NFL. Sorry, it just doesn't happen. I was laughing at Will Campbell, a rookie out of LSU for the Patriots, and he was like, man, he said bad teams have Pro Bowlers. Yeah, that's how it works. You're going to face a really good tackle, a solid tackle every week. Like, it's not going to be too many guys where you can say, oh yeah, he's food. I'm about to go eat. Get 3-4 sacks on him in his game. It doesn't necessarily work like that all the time. It has happened though. We've seen it. Shout out to Adrian Claiborne. How about that?
Oh boy.
Yeah, against the Cowboys. Yeah, do you remember that time? But yeah, I think James Prince Jr. is a guy that he's coming along, and I feel like he understands it, and it seems there is a lot of maturity when he speaks. He's short to the point. He don't play around with you and all of that stuff. And he gonna say exactly what's on his mind. And I appreciate and respect him for that type of stuff. But Free, what say you? Are you in the boat of, You've seen what you needed to see from James Pierce Jr. And I want to add a little caveat. Remember all the hype that was coming in, him with the dust-ups and the fights and all that stuff, man. Like, take away all the fights and everything, the dust-ups. How do you feel like he's developed since he's walked in the door at Flowery Branch?
Well, I'm not like James Pierce because I'm not short and to the point. I will sit here and talk forever.
He really is, though.
As far as living up to the hype, well, some of the hype was like this guy could be Javon Curse and he's gonna break 15 sacks. And I'm like,
so good.
I don't think he's lived up to that hype, but like no one was gonna live up to that hype, that was just classic, like, this could be the greatest pass rusher ever. And it's like, sure, yeah, that's in the realm of possibilities. In a world of, a million different multiverses, like there's one out there where James Pierce is the greatest pass rusher ever, but we're probably not living in that one. And so from that hype, no, he hasn't lived up to that hype. But I echo what Maria said. Like, he is on track to be a contributor. What we want to see from him, and I thought we saw growth from the first preseason game to the second preseason game. He's going to go out there. He's going to contribute as a pass rusher. He's still developing a pass rush plan. Jarvis, as you put it together, where a lot of it is just like, I'm better than you, and I'm just going to go around. But you kind of need that as a rookie coming into the league because, like, you haven't figured it all out. So it's just like, hey, just go be an athlete, and that will probably work for you some of the time, against some of the lesser tackles that you're going to face at certain points. So I think he's definitely on track to be a contributor. In terms of living up to the hype, probably not, but I think he's on track to be a guy that you can expect to be a quote unquote typical first round edge rusher, that when you look back over the last 5, 10, 15 years, those guys typically average around 4 to 6 sacks, 30, 40 pressures as rookies. I think he's definitely on track to contribute that. And then you just kind of hope that as the season wears on, he can continue to stay healthy. He can continue to show growth. And then, we can get, something November, December, we're sitting here going like, oh, like the player he is right now with all the reps that he's been able to get is significantly better than where he was in September. And all of a sudden that projection for what he can be, down the stretch, hopefully when the Falcons are playing meaningful games, is much, much higher. So I think he's on track for all of that. Whether that lives up to some of the hype, the lofty hype that he's in comparison to getting, we'll see. But I think he's definitely on track to be a significant contributor for the Falcons.
Jarvis, one quick thing, if I can say it.
Yeah, go.
There was hype around him for sure. And I think all of us were pretty big believers in James Pierce Jr., but he's at an advantage because a lot of people thought, why the heck would you trade back up into the first round for this player? There still were a lot of questions around him. And there were people who didn't believe that he could be as impactful as that draft pick number. And I think that he's proven the doubters wrong in camp, and good on him for doing that. And he hasn't said anything. To your point, he doesn't really say much. So he kind of leaves it all on the football field. And so I can't say enough good things about what he's been able to produce in training camp.
Aaron, this might not help slow the hype train down, but I did a little research, and guys that do come in and ball out in their rookie years, they're very similar body types that James Pierce has.
And James is faster than a lot of them, to be fair. He is so fast.
Yep. Alden Smith, Javon Curse. Yeah, they all built the same. They look exactly like almost. Yeah. So
he's telling you that he's living in the universe where he is going to be the greatest edge rusher.
That's not what I'm doing.
Yes, you are. Don't lie.
You invoked Javon Curse's name, Jarvis. So 15 sacks for James Pierce. You said it here. Book it, guys. And if James Pierce comes 1 sack under 15, then you know who to come for.
Failure.
James Pierce Jr. is going to lead the league in sacks because he's 6'5", 250. You know what I'm saying? Like, that just is automatic, baby. It's automatic. It's going down. So, yeah, here we go. We're off the rails as we get ready to wrap this show up. Now we're going to talk about some real stuff. That was fantasy. We're talking about some real stuff. How about this? This is the big practice squad game. We'll find out whether or not some starting roles are still up for grabs in the last game against the Cowboys. We'll discuss. Aaron, you know what I'm saying? I want to get your thoughts on this one, because we know that, Raheem Morris was speaking to the media, talking about the game, saying that no one was going to play, Jalon Walker, James Pierce Jr., and he still got asked about Michael Penix not playing. I mean, I don't understand why that was breaking news this week. Marie, I saw you tweeting out stuff, and
Yeah.
it's just like,
my thoughts on him not playing. Yeah.
yes, yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, okay, guys, we've been talking about him not playing in the preseason all preseason.
That was never not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. But anyway, I want to ask you this, Free. I think one of the things that I've been impressed by is the competition. For me specifically at that nickel spot, I feel like the offer has heard Terry Fontenot, with that 1-year deal, and I feel like Billy Bowman is all for coming in and having that starting role for the Falcons on this defense in year one. Where are you with that particular battle, or is there another battle that you feel like is still up for grabs?
Well, Jarvis, first I'll say it feels like all the discourse on the preseason stuff where it's just people just outing themselves. They're not everydayers of this show or Locked On Falcons.
They're just snitching on themselves, man.
Yeah,
snitching, man. Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough when it's like we've been talking about that a month ago. We're like, they ain't gonna play in the preseason. But anyway, we're not gonna get into that on today's episode. But we still haven't figured out what are those other positions that Jeff Ulbrich was indicating are open starting competitions, right? But
he said 3 or 4, right?
3 or 4, right? But we figured 2 of them are the nickel cornerback spot and the safety spot. And I think Jarvis,
I got the other one. I got the other one. Interior defensive line.
Oh, okay.
Interior defensive line, man.
Spicy.
Tackle spots. That base 3-4. Who's gonna be those ends? Like, and then nickel on third down. Like, who's going to be that? Is Zach Harrison going to be on the defensive end spot on first down and nickel if they're in 11 personnel? Like, all those things I feel like are up for grabs, and I think that, those are the 3 or 4. I mean, I don't know about the fourth one. I don't know about that one, but I give you the third one. It's definitely interior defensive line, but go ahead.
Yeah. I figured it was one of those spots up front, but it was like, which exactly one? But I think, Raheem said we'll get to see Natron Brooks get some nickel. So, it feels like
that's very interesting.
We're still not quite resolved on who exactly is going to be the week 1 nickel at this point in time. Is it going to be Alford? Is it going to be Brooks? Is it going to be Billy Bowman or whatnot? This is not the first time we did this. Like, you go back a couple of years ago with the center position where Matt Hennessy and Drew Dahlman were alternating, and we really didn't even know until like actual Sunday week 1. They're like, who actually is starting at the center position? So that may be a situation that we go through, but there'll be some opportunities for these guys to make plays on Friday night against the Cowboys in the secondary, where I do feel like there's some unresolved. I think right now, with Raheem saying like, probably we'll get all of these guys playing at some point, and they'll just kind of, this might be a competition that, carries itself into the regular season where, here's a series for you, here's a series for you. And then ultimately we'll figure out who's actually giving us the most consistent performance. And that will be the guy that we settle upon as the starter. But even then it might not be a full-time job. So I think that's going to be one of the ongoing battles. And we'll see if, like, I think Natron Brooks really has a chance to kind of throw his hat into the ring, because we've seen him make the plays as an outside corner. And I think the thing that makes Natron Brooks the preseason superstar that I've labeled him as is like, he absolutely does not care about his body. He is absolutely like, oh, I need to fill against the run. I'm going to throw my entire body into this tackle. And that's exactly what you want as a nickel cornerback that's going to be asked to sort of step in and contribute and run support. So I certainly think if he can get some work in the nickel and make some plays like he did last week against the Titans, then, we might be talking about Natron Brooks potentially, being that starting nickel and that guy that sort of just came out of nowhere to earn that spot.
Maria, are you with Aaron as far as that nickel spot being the starting role that you feel is still up for grabs, or do you have another spot that you feel there still needs some more tape on?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, Jarvis. I think interior defensive line is probably one of the other ones that Jeff Ulbrich didn't want to disclose, but is out there. But especially because they're going to be playing with such a heavy rotation, I think it, I don't even know if that really factors into it so much. We could be looking at different starters every game. I don't know how they're going to work that. We're going to quickly find that out. But yeah, I mean, I think that nickel position is clearly up for grabs. And when you hear that Natron Brooks is going to be worked out there as well, I have him making the 53. I do.
Oh, yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
he's had a phenomenal training camp. And not to mention, it feels like this Falcons staff is doing everything they can to give him a place on this roster. They're giving him a bunch of different looks and opportunities all over this defense, and he's just flashed so much. I could say so many things about why he's deserving of a spot on the 53, the interception, just how much he's popped off in the preseason game. So yeah, I think it's very interesting that they're working him in there. I don't know who it's going to be at nickel. I really don't. You could make a case for every single one of those guys to be the starting nickel. I think you're really going to start to see that come to fruition in this final preseason game against the Cowboys. But yeah, my mind goes there first.
Yeah, I think this was one of, like, we talked about, leading up to training camp. Like, that was one of my biggest things that I want to have my eye on when I was going out to practice. Like, what does that rotation look like? Because that's why I feel like you've seen so many of those guys play, like Root, Dorless, Harrison. Those they haven't been sitting those guys and saying, "Oh yeah, they're good. We know exactly what to expect." No, those guys are fighting for snaps right now. Like, and they've been doing it all preseason. So I think that when you get down to this last game, and there might be some spillage into the regular season leading up to it. And, because you got guys like Brandon Dorless who had an excellent camp, I feel like he's changed some views, like partially changed my view on him and what he could potentially be for this Falcons defense. So I think those are some of the things that definitely keep an eye on, because it's been really interesting seeing those guys go out there and get after it, and specifically in the middle of that defense. Now, since Morris talked about this being a big practice squad game, like, who do you feel is a good candidate that might be on the edge of making the roster, but he's really battling for one of those practice squad spots?
Well, I got to give it up to my guy, Chris Blair, who's out here, just balling in the preseason. And, we figure, okay, they're going to probably keep at least 6 wide receivers between Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod and Kadero Hodge, and then Jamal Agnew as the return specialist. And then who's going to be that 6th spot? And it feels like Casey Washington has locked that spot up.
Sure.
And so it's like, well, if Mooney's dealing with his injury, again, we never know when guys are going to come back here in Atlanta. But if Mooney is dealing with his injury, and it sounds like he's probably not going to be 100% at this stage, they'll probably keep a 7th wide receiver just to have an extra body in the event that Mooney does miss that week 1 game against Tampa Bay. Sure. And I felt like Chris Blair, based off of how he's played, is the guy that, at least in the preseason games, has earned that spot. But it does feel like the Falcons, based off of how they've played guys and how they've talked up David Sills, he seems like he's the front runner for that 7th spot. And so I think a guy like Chris Blair gets one more shot here on Friday night to really sort of make his case to be more than just a practice squad player, because I think the way that he's played this summer, like, he's not a guy that's going to guarantee to clear waivers. That we hear all this talk about all these teams that are, looking for wide receiver help. One of these teams could wind up claiming Chris Blair to see what he can do for them based off of how he's played this year. So I think, Blair is one of those guys that I think is right on the cusp that can really do a great job, that maybe, then the Falcons will be like, well, let's keep 8 wide receivers. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's such a crazy idea. But they did have like 5 receivers on the roster and like 17 guys on the practice squad last year. So they do like their wide receivers. So I think it's one of those things where I think Blair is one of those guys that's on the cusp and can really, fall on one side of the fence or the other based off how he plays on Friday night.
I think you can make the same argument for David Sills. I mean, it's in the same breath, the same conversation. Yes, there's been a lot of hype around him. We know he's QB2's guy. Kirk Cousins loves David Sills. We have learned that throughout training camp. And Zach Robinson.
First Kirk Cousins mentioned with a minute left in the show. How about that?
Wow. Well done, Maria. Woo!
There you go, Maria. Appreciate you.
Kirk's still on this team, by the way, in case you were wondering. So anyways, yeah, and Zach Robinson had really good things to say about David, and obviously he is very strongly trying to make a case. The fact that they're mixing him in there on special teams, I mean, they are trying to find a way to get him on the roster. It's similar to what I was saying about Natron Brooks, and that I feel like this coaching staff is trying to manipulate a way for these guys to make the roster. Natron probably just fine by himself. I think he's had that good of a camp. David, though, you put him on special teams, can you have an impact? That's what honestly determines a lot of these fringe guys too. It's how else can you contribute to the team, especially if we're going to carry a whole plethora of wide receivers. It's funny. I was at Georgia Tech yesterday working on something, and they have 7 tight ends. Could you imagine? Incredible.
Yes, Arthur Smith's daydream right there.
His literal dream. 7 tight ends.
Heaven.
And all 7 of those guys are going to play at Georgia Tech. So very fascinating. Not to derail the conversation. I just think that's really incredible. But anyways, yeah, you can make the same argument for David Sills. So, flip a coin at this point. And how many are they going to carry? I would presume it would be 6. They could make an argument for 7. Certainly they can make an argument for 7, but 8's crazy. And you know what? If they bring 8 wide receivers onto the 53, whatever. Why not? Let's go crazy.
I mean, the base offense is 3 wide receivers. So, hey, you got to have a little extra just in case of emergency. And then you already have your starting X. He's already, we don't know about him. We're going to find out, I guess. We're going to see it. We got a leg, we got a rib.
He's going to miss some time. He's going to miss some time.
Like, what does some time mean?
Exactly. I'll never forget, I'll say this, we can wrap this thing on up. But Raheem Morris was being asked about an injury. I think it was actually about Darnell Mooney. He said, yeah, about 2 weeks, we'll see. And then within that same 15-second frame, he's like, yeah, about 3 weeks, I'm like, bro, which one is it? 2, 3, 7?
I just want to know
14?
what some time is. Like, sometime in our jobs is like 2 days. So what is some time? Is sometime 5 weeks? Is sometime 3 weeks? What is some time?
And how are you saying it? Are you saying, you going to miss some time? You know what I'm saying? Like context is king, baby. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's where we are. So we'll end it on that note. We want to say thank you, guys, for making the Falcons Squad show. I almost slipped up. Oh man, I'm proud of myself. I haven't all day. Falcons Squad show, your first listen of the day. Why don't you stop by Locked On Falcons and make Aaron Freeman your second listen of the day? He is amazing. He's Mr. AKA, and he's that guy. He's that dude. And oh yeah, check out Maria on Sports Extra on Sunday. She's a superstar, holding it down. She's shining, and she's shining. Yeah, she got her shades on, but she doesn't. Oh yeah, we're gonna end it on another bad joke by me. We'll see y'all.